Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing well and welcome back to Kayan Al-Bashar, where today we are having the Season 2 finale of Kayan Al-Bashar. And what better way to end the season than by building a palace, which is actually the main part of the Sultan/Emperor's palace. I'm going to get more into the Sultan versus Emperor thing in a minute, but with that being said, let's get into today's video. So the inspiration for the palace is the Great Palace of Constantinople, which kind of difficult because it doesn't really stand anymore, and my main information source, well, not my main information source, but the main for reference pictures, which again is still Assassin's Creed Revelations, doesn't really feature the Great Palace of Constantinople because by that time period, well, the palace wasn't really standing anymore, and even if it was in better condition, I mean, the main focus was in that game and basically around that time period, because Kayan Al-Bashar lore-wise is set around the 15 to 1600s, but at that time, of course, Ottomans, so the main focus is on Topkapi Palace and not on the, I think by then already crumbling Great Palace of Constantinople. So I tried to sort of incorporate the features of Byzantine architecture and some things that I could find about the Great Palace of Constantinople, but then also modernize it because it's 1600, so by this time period, well, the Byzantine Empire is no longer, the Great Palace is crumbling if it's not already broken. So there are some things that you might think are looking a little bit Italian, which is completely true because this is actually the funny bit, because while I was building, I was constantly thinking, don't build a second facade, don't build a second facade. And then I looked at it afterwards and thought, this looks Venetian, which kind of works because in Venice there's a lot of the San Marco, the great church in Venice, there is quite a lot of Byzantine influence. There's also Byzantine statues that they stole from Constantinople, which, yeah, it's one of the main reasons why I don't like Venice. Well, I like the city, I just don't like the history. But anyway, so there are some features that might look a little bit too Italian, but then, I mean, we also have Roman influence, so by now, Kayan Al-Bashar basically has influence from all around the Mediterranean, so it makes sense that Italian somehow gets in here. This is actually one of the things that I'm really happy with that I could build, because it was a main feature in, the images that I could find of the Great Palace of Constantinople, which is a lot of vaulted ceilings. Long-stay viewers of the channel might still remember the vaulted ceilings of the old version of Kayan Al-Bashar, the corrupted version, because for anyone who's new here, yeah, the Kayan Al-Bashar that we are building in currently with the Mirage Mountains, with the Royal Palace of Bashar, is the second version. There is a first version, so I can't actually say that this project is half a year old. It's more like 4 months or something. I don't even know by this point. I've been so ingrained in the project that I don't even know anymore how long the project has been going on. And it's probably going to go on until Christmas or something. I have to also, of course, because this is the season finale of Kayan Al-Bashar, have to sort of explain what is going to happen with Kayan Al-Bashar going forward, so that you guys also have a clear idea on what's going to happen. So there are going to be probably 4 seasons of Kayan Al-Bashar, if my PC can handle it, of course, because, I mean, I don't think I should build it when my PC spontaneously just bursts into flames because of all the pieces that I'm using. I mean, vaulted ceilings are basically somewhat inverted domes, so they have almost similar amounts of building pieces needed for them. And that's only for one part of a vaulted ceiling. Basically, what's going to happen is that after today's episode, Kayan Al-Bashar will basically go behind the scenes for, I would say, 2 weeks while I finish up some small things that in themselves aren't really worthy of a video. So it's like, you know, building that one random house that I still need to build somewhere, or filling up that one small island with some foliage and making the place feel a little bit more alive by like maybe adding some market stalls. Like those tiny little things that aren't really worthy of a video, but I still want to do before I fully release, well, season 1 and 2 of Kayan Al-Bashar to you guys, so that you guys get the whole picture. In the meantime, I'm also going to write the lore of Kayan Al-Bashar, because I know I'm going way too far into this. I mean, it's Planet Zoo, and I'm using it as Planet Builder or Planet World Builder. I'm, of course, happy with that. But it also means that I want to get everything completely right, so I'm going to write lore so that if you are like interested in like the thought process behind Kayan Al-Bashar, so basically how I sort of think like, alright, these are the people of Kayan Al-Bashar, this is the culture, this is the history, and all of that, then that's also then available at the same time that Kayan Al-Bashar will go on the workshop. In the meantime, when Kayan Al-Bashar goes for like a 2-week hiatus when it comes to like videos and such, I might potentially still stream building Kayan Al-Bashar, because I mean, in a stream it's a little bit easier to build the more minute stuff. I mean, I built half of the gardens for this palace on a stream, so probably going to still have Kayan Al-Bashar on the streams, which this is going to be a shameless plug, but I try to stream every Tuesday and Friday, so it might still show up there if I have like something that I think like, oh, this could be fun for a stream but not fun enough for a video. But in the meantime, while I'm sort of working on Kayan Al-Bashar in the background, then I'm also going to write the lore, and then when everything is finished, which I think is like halfway through August that it will be finished, then I will put it on the workshop. There will then also be a tour of Kayan Al-Bashar. There will be a cinematic video because it's a huge release, because I want to say it's a half year's worth of work, but it's sort of not, because that would include the first version of Kayan Al-Bashar, which is actually still on the workshop. I don't know if anyone can open it because, yeah, that's station. I have no idea how my PC is handling the Hagia Sophia. Or this palace, in matter of fact. I mean, actually, by building this palace, which kind of went a little bit over my head, or a little bit, what you see right now is actually what I first wanted the size of the palace to be. But then, of course, me being a squirrel, I made it larger, so in the course of building this palace, I lost 10 FPS. Like, first I had a steady 30, now I have a steady 20, so I mean, it's fine when I'm not looking at the palace, but yeah, it's not that good when I am looking at the palace, because yeah, the FPS just drops. I mean, I still have better than like the 5 that I had in the old version. I actually don't know really why. Like, I think the Hagia Sophia and the palace combined so far have probably the same amount of pieces as the old version of Kayan Al-Bashar. I don't know for sure if that's completely true, but sounds true enough. But anyway, so yeah, for 2 weeks it will go behind the scenes. You guys will maybe only see it in streams in the meantime. But while Kayan Al-Bashar is behind the scenes, while I'm working on the more minute stuff, then I actually have planned to do like more standalone builds. So I already posted like a poll in the community tab of the channel asking like, do you guys want to see like old Hollywood or hyper modern Japanese? Don't know where that came from. Or like steampunk, just general Asian, because I couldn't really nail down if I wanted steampunk like Chinese, Thailand, or Indian. So I just said steampunk Asian because I couldn't nail it down. And surprisingly enough, like I thought that like hyper modern or ultra modern Japanese would win by a landslide. It's actually, for a long time it was tied between steampunk Asian and hyper modern or ultra modern Japanese. But in the end, steampunk Asian actually one. So yeah, I have to look up a bit more about like how to do steampunk really well. But yeah, in the end, I will make things work, because I mean, it's interesting to like try a new style, because that's one of the best ways to learn how to build, if you sort of go out of your comfort zone. Even though this is, well, the palace is sort of reverting back to my comfort zone, because there's a lot of course, Roman/Greek influence in the palace. Then there's also a lot of Italian influence or just Baroque influence, which of course brings me back to Isla Pacifica, which I still haven't worked on, so it's still also not on the workshop. Maybe I should instead, no, I am going to do standalone builds, but I should also probably one time just pick up Isla Pacifica again, because I've fully realized by now that I'm not really going to work on it unless I am being forced to, which basically means if I make videos about it or if I'm streaming it. But anyway, so back to the actual palace now that the ramble or the, well, basically information dump about the season 2 finale and going into season 3, how that's going to go. But going quickly back into the palace, this is actually one of the few parts where I really had like a clear reference. From what I know, I am not going to pronounce the name, it's because I also don't fully remember it, but also because I probably will butcher it. But the, well, facade that I'm building right now with a lot of archers, because Byzantines love their archers. But what I'm building right now is actually based off what I think is the entrance gate, or was the entrance gate to the Great Palace of Constantinople. And just a quick tidbit, because I was always like, why is it the Great Palace of Constantinople? And then I looked at like the size of the entire place, and yeah, then I understood why it's the Great Palace, because you could just as easily name it the Big Palace, because it took up a large portion of the city. Well, just I think it's just looking at like the floor space or the amount of ground that it covered, I think it's actually bigger than like Topkapi Palace, I think, or it's like uneven size. But yeah, it also made me want to build a hippodrome, because why not? I mean, I still have zebras, so I could still build a hippodrome. Yeah, I have a great love for Byzantine architecture, or basically just anything that I can sort of relate back to ancient Greece. Which is a little bit strange, because Byzantium, or the Byzantine Empire, I always keep it in mind as like Greece for some reason, but then it's more heavily tied in with Roman, because they saw themselves as like, you know, the Roman Empire still, which in a way they were, because they are basically what was formerly the Eastern Roman Empire, so totally understand that. But for some reason the Byzantine Empire was always Greek. I always in my brain tied it more heavily to like ancient Greece than the Romans for some reason. Yeah, I think that's where my love of the Byzantine Empire comes from. And then yeah, this also just a quick note, and this is something that I've been somewhat having spin in my head for some time, but I love the city of Venice, but as I said before, I don't like the history, because I hold Venice completely responsible for the collapse of the Byzantine Empire. Like, yeah, the Ottomans took the city, but by that point, the city was like a shell of its former self already, so why sack Constantinople when they were somewhat of your allies? And yeah, no. I mean, they still in Venice have those like lions that they, I think, looted out of Constantinople. Surrounding city. Yeah, nah. I'm going to move on before this becomes like, I hate Venice rant. But anyway, so the second thing that I wanted to do is build a bell tower. Now in the streams, because I actually streamed this part, I constantly called this a clock tower. And I don't know why, because it's completely not a clock tower, because there's no clocks anywhere in this building actually. But for some reason I keep calling it a clock tower, but I know it's a bell tower, and later on I actually built a bell. And this is, in a way, maybe a little bit strange because in Kayan Al-Bashar, the Hagia Sophia is a completely, I think the name for it is secular building, like it's not tied to any religion, unless you see the like Sultan slash Emperor as like a religious figure, which you could. I'm actually going to write that into the lore of Kayan Al-Bashar. Again, I'm going way too far with that, but I want to build a world and not a soup. It's basically the entire motto of Kayan Al-Bashar. So yeah, this tower is somewhat strange, but I think it just works out by like basically building up the skyline of Kayan Al-Bashar. Because before this bell tower, the skyline of Kayan Al-Bashar, or basically the royal palace of Bashar, was kind of flat within the bump of the Hagia Sophia slash Sultan slash Emperor's Palace. Also, just a quick note on why I call it the Emperor's Palace as well as the Sultan's Palace from now on. It's just because of the lore, because again, with Kayan Al-Bashar, there's so much influence from all around the world that I just made up the story because that, well, how can I explain this well? We already have the Emperor's Fields in Kayan Al-Bashar, because if I'm correct, and might not be completely correct because I have made names for buildings and then forgot the meaning of them, which is the reason why I can't really say the meaning behind the temple, which is basically my version of Petra in Kayan Al-Bashar. Completely forgotten the meaning behind the name. It's something like Frozen Oasis or something. But then the village of Karshnik, which again is season 1 of Kayan Al-Bashar, if you translate that or find the meaning behind the name, it becomes the Emperor's Fields. So there's already a link to emperors in Kayan Al-Bashar. So I just made up the lore that the people of Kayan Al-Bashar are so diverse and such that titles, they both use like the Eastern counterpart of a title as the Western. I don't know that. And the Emperor is like, or Sultan is such a mysterious figure that no one has really seen him. Which, again, works well with Kayan Al-Bashar and basically Planet Zoo as a whole, because we don't have entertainers or anyone that we can make it look like this place is actually like really lived in, that you see people like wandering around, browsing the market stalls or something. And yeah, this is Planet Zoo. I think I've lost that point way, like, ages ago. But anyway, back to the bell tower. I almost wanted to call it the clock tower again, but yeah, I have no idea why. I think it's maybe because the last time I built something similar to this was back in the old Tianopolis days, where I did build a clock tower. I think, yes, it was a clock tower actually. So maybe it's because of that, but this is completely a bell tower. And again, it doesn't really have a reason to be there. But anyway, I just wanted it there just to have a tower and improve the skyline of Kayan Al-Bashar, but mostly just to have a tower. Because, again, I call myself a squirrel. So when I was building this bell tower, the only thing that was going through my mind is like, if you just grab onto those bricks there and jump to that ledge there, and, you know, I basically set out a whole path on how to climb this, which also, again, reminded me of Assassin's Creed, because, well, again, like in Venice, there's a lot of, like, Byzantine influence in the architecture. I think that if you, like, recolor this bell tower, almost at clock tower again, if you heard that, but if you recolor it to a little bit more reddish brick, I think you will find bell towers or clock towers. Oh no, actually bell towers as well in Assassin's Creed. I don't have clock towers actually. But you will probably find something that's very similar to this one. So again, this is the point where I was like, am I going too close to like an Italian palazzo instead of a Byzantine palace? Which, yeah, but then also by the end I was like, I don't really mind anymore, because it looks pretty. Really like going with like some Byzantine architecture as well. Even though Kayan Al-Bashar is like supposed to be this like Arabian slash general Islamic architecture when it comes to the buildings. But I just like to mix and match because, I mean, it goes with Constantinople, which now of course is Istanbul, but was it called Istanbul already back then? Or like that's the thing with like most place names, they evolve over time. I mean, how many place names did Paris have before it was named Paris? So yeah, places evolve over time. So I like to have like architecture styles that look older, that look like they have been there for a long time. And also just a quick note, because I built the evil queen's castle, or basically Snow White's castle, and made up the backstory of like, oh, they were at like the Sultan slash Emperor of Kayan Al-Bashar and the evil queen, who's in my version of Kayan Al-Bashar just the queen, because yeah, history is taught by the victors, but or the ones who succeed basically. But yeah, the Hagia Sophia on itself already overshadows that palace, so it's very clear who won that war. I really just love this bell tower. I constantly want to say clock tower for some reason. But it was also just really fun to just build this and just completely change up architecture styles. Because again, so far most of the things have been like with Turkish or Moroccan influence, and now to go like completely Byzantine. Well, completely, it's also Italian, but it was just really fun to build this, and it also just made me realize how many arches there are in Byzantine architecture, because everything so far is arched in a way. Because, I mean, you can look at this bell tower already. The upper part where the bell is going to sit is basically an arch within an arch, and then there are some windows on the palace that I will build later on. I quickly built some because I forgot to build them on camera, but I just wanted to have them in the video as well, because, well, there's a lot of footage that's gotta end up on the cutting floor, or that I decided like, alright, this might be like fun to see, but then the video is going to be 50 minutes, which I'm not going to put you guys through because I don't have the patience for that, so I'm not going to put you guys through a video that I wouldn't watch. But yeah, there were a lot of arches, and then you have windows, which are arches within arches. Yeah, luckily it's not going as far as the Hagia Sophia when it comes to domes, but yeah, it was fun to realize how many arches there were, and I mean, yeah, I think I'm also like somewhat happy that most of it is finished by now, so that I am not going too extreme with like all the arches, but I'm probably going to develop or basically integrate more Byzantine features in the rest of the palace as well. And now I'm building a bell. Yeah, I'm not the greatest at it. Like, give me a dome and I'm completely happy. For some reason, building a bell shape is weird for me, when it's basically just a dome on a slightly less domey dome. Basically, it's a dome on a tube, which extends outwards. But yeah, I now just imagine just like the bell ringer. Like, how loud is that going to be? A bell such as this one, well, actually most bells are probably larger. But yeah, there's also only one bell in this tower because, again, lore-wise, like the bell tower looks pretty and such, but doesn't make a lot of sense because, again, in Kayan Al-Bashar, the Hagia Sophia, unlike in the real world of today, is a completely secular building. Which, yeah, I realized or found out that from, well, past Friday, Hagia Sophia is a mosque again. I don't really mind as long as they like keep the building intact. I'm not really that much of a religious person. I just like history, so but it makes, well, yeah, I really don't care if it's a mosque, museum, or a church or anything. I just want the history to still be to keep the building intact. That's just my quick tidbit. And now back to the arches within arches. But yeah, those windows that I'm using, I think are from now on, I am just going to say they're one of the most versatile windows in the game, because you can use them to make larger windows. But yeah, that's going to be basically it for today's video and for the Season 2 finale of Kayan Al-Bashar. So again, Kayan Al-Bashar will go on a sort of break for 2 weeks while I work on it behind the scenes. But in the meantime, I am going to basically do some standalone builds. Also, for anyone who has reached this point of the video, and if you answer this question, I know that you've watched the entirety of the video, but what are your guys' guesses on what Season 3 will be? Because we know Season 4 will be the city, but Season 3 I have kept secret so far, which, knowing that I am a squirrel, was really hard to do. But anyway, if you answered that question, then I know you'll watch to the end. If you didn't answer that question, then I will send an army of squirrels to find you. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it, so I hope all of you have a lovely day. I want to, of course, thank you all for watching the videos, and I hope to see you back in the next video. If you want to see more, of course, liking and subscribing always helps, and I just wish you all a lovely day. Bye bye!